Klan Country. Perhaps the biggest obstacle was the idea itself. Although Soul City was intended to be an integrated community open to all races, McKissick made clear that his primary goal was to help Black people, especially those who were poor or unemployed. For that reason, and because of its name, Soul City was quickly branded an experiment in Black nationalism, a sort of domestic Liberia. This played well among advocates of Black power, whose ranks and influence had grown sharply in recent years. But to many who had fought for integration, or at least come to accept it, Soul City seemed like a step backward, not forward. As one Southern newspaper put it when McKissick announced his plans in January 1969, how terribly tragic it would be should all civil rights roads cut in the past 20 years lead to Soul City, a Camelot built on racism. In reality, McKissick's dream was about economic equality, not separatism. It is true that he had emerged as one of the leading spokesmen for Black power, and that his rhetoric was often divisive and inflammatory. "If white America does not respond to peaceful protest," he wrote in his 1969 book, 3/5 of a Man, "Black people will be forced to work for their liberation through violent revolution." But he had also spent his entire life breaking down racial barriers, first for himself, then for his children, then for the Black community at large. It was McKissick whose children integrated the Durham public schools in 1958, and it was McKissick who led nonviolent protests against segregated buses, lunch counters, dime stores, ice cream parlors, swimming pools, bathrooms, water fountains, and amusement parks for 2 decades, enduring taunts, beatings, arrests, and humiliations, all in the name of integration. Over the years, however, he had become frustrated by the failure of the civil rights movement to bring about sustained, meaningful change. Like many Black leaders, he had to come to realize that marches and demonstrations, lawsuits and legislation could only achieve so much. For Black Americans to be truly free, he believed, they needed power, economic power to be precise. If a Black man has no bread in his pocket, the solution to his problem is not integration, McKissick liked to say. It is to get some bread. That's why, although McKissick had no desire to exclude whites, his dream was to build a city where Blacks would call the shots, where a race of people who had once been thought and sold to enrich others would finally control its own economic destiny. And despite the obstacles he faced, that dream was no longer fantastical. Just weeks earlier, the Nixon administration had awarded Soul City a $14 million loan guarantee, the equivalent of about $87 million today, to prepare the land for development. The loan was part of a fledgling program created by Congress to finance the building of new towns across the country, and Soul City was not the only project to receive support. So far, the Department of Housing and Urban Development had approved the building of 11 new communities, from a futuristic high-rise complex near downtown Minneapolis to an eco-friendly exurb outside Houston. But Soul City was the only project located in a rural area, far from a major metropolis, and the only one led by a Black developer. And federal support had not come cheaply. In return for the loan guarantee, McKissick had changed his party affiliation from Democrat to Republican and endorsed Richard Nixon's 1972 re-election campaign. He would soon become the president's chief Black spokesman, traveling the country, giving stump speeches, and raising money from Black voters. It was a bizarre political union. Nixon, the law and order president whose Southern strategy had exploited racism to win white votes, and McKissick, the militant Black leader who was under surveillance by the FBI. And it raised more than a few eyebrows, with conservatives questioning Nixon's judgment and prominent Black leaders accusing McKissick of selling out. But like most political unions, it offered benefits to both sides. For Nixon, Soul City was a chance to improve his image among Black voters without risking his support among whites. Instead of embracing civil rights and